More Season of Mastery changes have been data mined that indicate more changes to tackle bots, solo farming Princess in Mara, adding new mechanics to every boss in Molten Core, to Onyxia, and what looks like achievements in Classic WoW for the Hardcore Challenge. Let's take a look. So overnight, Blizzard pushed another build to the Classic Season of Mastery, and I've got to say a big thank you and a shout out to our boy Rockman from Wowhead, who has been on fire with the data mining for these updates, which have revealed some interesting changes. First up are the hardcore achievements being added to Classic WoW. So we've got Survivor, Survivor of the Firelord, Shadow Flame, Old God, Damned, and the addition of a new spell ID attached to something called Perished at level. So the current thoughts are Survivor is for reaching level 60 without dying, Firelord is for killing Ragnaros without dying, Shadow Flame for Nefarian, Old God for Cthulhu, and Damned for Kel'Thuzad. With Perished at level being pretty self-explanatory, it will show what level you died at if you died at all. So the addition of these achievements line up nicely with the almost unanimous feeling in the community that we're going to be getting Wrath of the Lich King Classic. It makes complete sense for them to already be working on Wrath Classic, and the opportunity to backfit the achievement system into existing Classic for testing with the Season of Mastery beta is definitely worth making use of. Let me know what you think about achievements being added into Classic WoW or TBC before Wrath of the Lich King Classic comes out. Next up are two new buffs or spell IDs, the Blessing of Theridas and Thief. The Blessing of Theridas adds an immune to snare and root effect buff that also increases movement speed by 50%. With Princess Theridas being the last boss of Marathon, who is often solo farmed by range classes and then the loot is sold, this will make her more difficult to be farmed, especially by bots. We know our human players will find a way to overcome this, but bots will likely struggle. This also seems to be the rationale behind the new Thief buff. Whilst there are no confirmed mechanics that we found in data mining behind the spell, it does have a description that reads, "Given the recent string of thievery, enemies around you have stashed most of their belongings elsewhere." So it's safe to assume that this buff will likely be applied to the mobs in Blackrock Depths. This will be an attempt to try and crack down on the pickpocket bots that run rampant. Whilst I'm personally on the fence with this princess change, because I don't really know how often she was actually farmed by bots, we know that the pickpocket farm going on in Blackrock Depths is more often than not being run by bots. So it's an excellent way to tackle the bots that are farming it 24/7 that eventually sell the gold on third-party websites. I hope that if some of these changes are successful, they're pushed to all current and future Classic servers. Do you think these changes will actually help tackle bots, or will they just end up discovering another farm that they'll run and we'll be back to square one? Next up are more changes to Molten Core and Onyxia, and I have to admit I was actually getting ready to edit and upload a video talking about how boring the raid testing was on Thursday night. The increased boss health and minimal amount of new mechanics for bosses in Molten Core was honestly a really boring experience. It actually started off fun and hyped to be back in Molten Core, but that quickly fell away as it was clear that the intended difficulty increase only made fights longer and not really harder, with a few exceptions. Well, apparently the devs already realized this quickly whilst digging around old versions of the raid encounters, with mechanic changes only being found for Onyxia, Golemag, and Ragnaros. They heard the feedback loud and clear that a blanket 100% health buff increase to bosses and trash is just not going to cut it. It doesn't really make things more challenging, and it goes against their design goal and intentions for Season of Mastery. So they've said with the next upcoming beta build, they plan to make significant adjustments to almost every encounter in Molten Core and of course Onyxia's lair. And they're planning to have this ready in time for another round of raid testing this Thursday, 28th of October. They also added, to be clear, we don't intend these or any future changes we make to Season of Mastery raid encounters to increase the difficulty of the content to a point where experienced, prepared raid groups will have to wipe for days or weeks to progress on it. We also don't intend to change the fights so much that they become completely unrecognizable or fundamentally different from their classic versions. Our intent is to provide something subtle and fresh to go along with Season of Mastery that feels very much in keeping with the spirit of the original encounters. And it is seriously refreshing and promising to hear the devs are keeping their finger on the pulse of the community feedback and the experiences we're having in the beta. More and more I see the right moves being made by the WoW Classic team. They're showing that they're really taking Season of Mastery and Classic itself a lot more seriously than they ever have before. However, I know the community is a little bit divided on the subject of Season of Mastery and the changes, so please share your thoughts on these raid changes in the comments. And lastly are a few quick mentions from the devs. They've disabled the Flask of Petrification on beta. Players were using it to back out of world PvP and grief each other. The crazy disconnect issue that was plaguing Stormwind City on the beta is being investigated. Please continue to share feedback if it happens to you. And that third realm that popped up, which stirred up up quite a bit of buzz with people wondering what it was actually for. Apparently, it was to test background processes, and it means nothing for gameplay or future plans for gameplay with Season of Mastery. So no concerns there, but I wonder if they were secretly testing the back end of achievements already in-game on that server. I'll be back with another video on the raid changes once they've confirmed exactly what they are, and I'll be streaming more of the raid testing on Thursday night here on YouTube and over on Twitch as well, so if you want to join in, feel free to send a message. And check out this video if you missed out on the Season of Mastery changes from the end of last week that I think are huge for the future of Classic WoW.